They weren't in love, not yet. They were business partners, friends, roommates who thought they understood each other. That assumption didn't survive the trailer. He bought it confidently, too confidently. A clean enough trailer, good tires, straight hitch. He saw numbers, margins, efficiency, a fast turnaround. She saw chaos, not because it was messy, but because it had no soul, no story, no feeling, just empty space and loud opinions. From day one, they disagreed. He wanted speed, she wanted intention. He said, "We can knock this out in a week." She said, "Then it'll look like it." This wasn't emotional arguing. This was strategic warfare. Every decision became a standoff. Layout, materials, lighting, even where the door should open. They stopped asking each other questions. They started making statements. The trailer felt it. Half-finished walls, tools left mid-task. Progress that looked impressive from far away and hollow up close. At one point, he worked alone for 2 days straight. When she came back, she didn't yell. She just stood there and said, "That's not what we agreed this place would feel like." That sentence hit harder than anger, because she was right. They had talked about why they were doing this. Not money, not content, not speed. Freedom. And the trailer didn't feel free. So they reset, not with an apology, with boundaries. He took structure, she took design. No overlap, no micromanaging, just trust or failure. Something changed immediately. The build stopped fighting itself. Walls aligned, light softened, flow returned. The trailer stopped feeling like a compromise and started feeling like a collaboration. He respected how she slowed things down just enough. She respected how he kept things moving forward. Neither one. That's why it worked. When it was finished, they stood inside quietly. No celebration, no victory speech, just recognition. This wasn't a couple story. This was a partnership story. This is Hitch to home. Not every trailer tests love. Some test ego. Some test respect. Some test whether two strong visions can exist in the same space. And sometimes, the real build is learning how to share control. They thought this one would be easy. That's what made it dangerous. The trailer was solid, the plan was clear, and for the first time, people were watching before it was finished. Photos were posted, clips shared, progress updates rolled out early. Comments came fast. "Looks amazing already. Can't wait to see the final. You two are killing it." Momentum feels good. But momentum doesn't forgive shortcuts. The first mistake was small, barely noticeable. A rushed measurement. A decision made for speed instead of structure. Nobody online saw it, but the trailer did. The second mistake stacked on top of the first. Then a third. Suddenly, the build looked finished, but felt wrong. Doors didn't sit right. Weight distribution felt off. Systems worked until they didn't. They ignored it, because admitting something's wrong feels harder when people are cheering. The day of the public walkthrough arrived anyway. Camera on, smiles ready, confidence practiced. At first, it went fine. Then a cabinet door fell open mid-sentence. Then a drawer jammed. Then the floor creaked in a way it shouldn't. The comments changed. "You see that? That doesn't look safe. Why is it doing that?" Silence replaced confidence. They finished the walkthrough anyway, but the trailer had already spoken. That night, The footage replayed quietly on a screen. No music, no talking, just mistakes looping back at them. This wasn't a private failure, this was shared. The trailer sat outside again, unfinished in a different way. Not broken, but exposed. For the first time, neither of them tried to take control. They just sat on the steps and let the embarrassment settle. That's when the conversation finally got honest. Not defensive, not strategic, honest. They admitted what they rushed, what they ignored, what they pretended wouldn't matter. The rebuild wasn't dramatic, it was careful. They took things apart, on camera this time, explained the mistakes, owned them. No excuses. The comments changed again. Respect for showing this. This is real. Glad you didn't fake it. When the trailer was finished again, it felt different. Not impressive. Earned. They didn't relaunch with hype. They didn't pretend it went smoothly. They just showed the truth. This is Hitch to home. Not every failure happens in private. Some happen where everyone can see. And sometimes, the moment you stop performing is the moment the build finally becomes real.
They didn't start this build with a plan. They started it with a question. After the public failure, the trailer sat empty again. Not because they didn't know what to do, but because they finally admitted they didn't have to decide alone. For the first time, they turned the cameras on before the work began, and they asked the audience for help. What would you change? What would you keep? What would you do differently if this were yours? They didn't expect much. They were wrong. The responses came in waves, sketches, voice notes, long comments written late at night, people arguing respectfully in threads about layouts, lighting, storage, weight balance. Strangers cared. Some ideas were wild. Some were impossible. Some were so simple they wondered how they'd missed them before. They printed comments out, drew lines on the floor with tape, argued, but this time with curiosity instead of ego. This build didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to everyone who had followed the mistake and stayed. The audience voted on the layout, chose the colour palette, debated the kitchen orientation like it was their own home. Even the mistakes were discussed openly. When something didn't work, they showed it. When something surprised them, they admitted it. Progress felt different this time. Slower, but stronger. Every decision carried weight because it represented more than taste. It represented trust. As the walls went up, comments shifted from suggestions to encouragement. You've got this. Take your time. This already feels better. By the time the interior came together, the trailer felt familiar, even to people who had never stepped inside it. The final walkthrough wasn't polished. It was shared. They read comments out loud while standing inside, laughed at inside jokes only the audience would understand, paused where someone had said, "This is where I'd sit with coffee." And somehow, they were right. This trailer wasn't perfect, but it was connected. This is Hitch to home. Sometimes the best design tool is letting go of control. Because when people build with you, not just watch you, the result carries more than function. It carries community. This time, the trailer didn't need anything. No loose ends, no unfinished corners, no excuses left. It was done. And that's when the hardest question showed up. Do you keep it, or do you let it go? They stood inside longer than necessary, not because they were admiring the work, but because they were realizing what it represented. This trailer carried mistakes, it carried embarrassment, it carried repair, humility, and trust, rebuilt in real time. Selling it would make sense. The numbers worked. The demand was there. People had already asked. Messages filled their inbox. How much? Is it available? Please tell me you're selling. Keeping it would make sense, too. It was familiar now, comfortable. a reminder of what happens when ego steps aside and collaboration takes over. So they didn't decide. They turned the cameras on. And they asked the audience, "We built this together. You saw the failure. You helped design the fix. Now you choose. Sell it or keep it?" The comments split immediately. Sell it. Let someone else live in it. Keep it. You earned this. Sell it and fund the next build. No, this one matters too much. The trailer sat quietly while thousands of strangers debated its future. Days passed. They read every comment, even the long ones, especially the long ones. Patterns formed. People didn't just talk about money, they talked about timing, about knowing when to release something, about how some things are meant to be chapters, not endings. The decision came quietly. No announcement, no dramatic pause, just action. On the final day, they stood inside one last time. No cameras moving, no music swelling, just gratitude. They listed it, not because it wasn't special, but because it was. Someone else would wake up in this space. Someone else would drink coffee where strangers once voted on layouts. Someone else would inherit a story they didn't witness, but would feel. This is Hitch to Home. Sometimes the most meaningful part of a build is knowing when to pass it on. Because homes don't just change the people who build them. They change the people who choose them next. And this one, it was ready to move. The trailer left on a Tuesday. No countdown, no goodbye speech, just a truck pulling forward. And empty space where something used to be. At first, it felt right. The inbox was quieter. The pressure was gone. The decision had already been made. That's supposed to feel like relief. And for a moment, it did. They cleaned the driveway, put tools away, returned to routines that had been paused for months, dinner at normal times, evenings without edits, comments, or debates. Everything went back to normal, too normal. The first night, they caught themselves looking out the window, not because they expected the trailer to be there, but because something felt unfinished, not wrong, just absent. They told themselves it was adjustment, that this is what closure feels like, that letting go is always quieter than building. Then the message came. A photo. The new owner standing inside the trailer, smiling, coffee in hand, light hitting the walls exactly the way it was designed to. "Thank you," the message said. "This place already feels like home." They stared at the screen longer than necessary. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. That trailer was never meant to stay, they knew that. So why did it feel like something had been taken? The next few days were stranger. They had time again, but no direction. No shared focus. No problem to solve together. Conversations shortened. Not out of tension, but out of uncertainty. They hadn't realized how much the build had been anchoring them. Not as a distraction, as a practice. Listening, compromising, working towards something tangible. Without it, they felt oddly out of rhythm. One night, they admitted it out loud. "I didn't think I'd miss it this much." That sentence wasn't about the trailer, it was about what it created between them. The trailer was gone, but the version of themselves it pulled out wasn't something they wanted to lose. That's when the regret clarified. Not regret for selling, regret for almost thinking it was the end. This is Hitch to Home. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go is realizing what you accidentally built along the way. And sometimes the regret isn't about losing the trailer. It's about realizing you're not done building. They promised they wouldn't. Not dramatically, not publicly. Just one of those quiet promises you make when you're trying to be responsible. No more trailers for a while. Let's just enjoy normal. We don't need another project. They meant it, at least. They thought they did. The listing showed up accidentally. That's how these things always start. A late-night scroll, a photo that lingered half a second longer than it should have. It wasn't special, not obviously. Older, plain. parked crooked in someone's backyard like it had already been forgotten. They sent it to each other as a joke. "Look at this one." "No. Just look." They both looked. And that was the mistake. The next morning they drove by just to see it in person. No plans, no tools, no intention to buy, just curiosity. The trailer smelled like dust and old summers. The door stuck. The floor complained when they stepped inside. And somehow it felt familiar. They didn't talk about money. They talked about possibilities. That's how they knew. The promise echoed quietly in the background. But it didn't feel like a rule anymore. It felt like fear wearing responsibility's clothes. They stood outside longer than necessary. Then one of them said it. "We said we wouldn't." The other nodded. Then added, "But we didn't say never." The paperwork was fast. Too fast. The kind of fast that doesn't give guilt time to fully arrive. It showed up later, on the drive home, the trailer in the mirror, the silence between them thicker than usual. "Are we doing this again?" "Yeah." "Are we okay with that?" They didn't answer right away, because the answer wasn't simple. That night, the trailer sat in the driveway like a confession. No excitement yet, no tools out, just acknowledgement. This wasn't impulse anymore. It was acceptance. They weren't addicted to trailers. They were committed to the process, to building something together, to learning in public, to choosing movement over comfort. This is Hitch to home. Sometimes promises aren't meant to stop you. They're meant to pause you just long enough to make sure you're choosing the right reason. And sometimes, the trailer you promised not to buy is the one that reminds you who you are. They didn't announce it. That was the first clue something was off. No posts, no photos, no casual mentions, just a trailer, quietly existing where it technically wasn't supposed to. At first, hiding it felt harmless, temporary. They parked it a little farther back, covered it just enough to look like storage, timed visits carefully, tools went back inside faster than usual. It became a game. If anyone asks, it's just holding something for a friend. If anyone comes over, we park in front of it. If anyone notices, we improvise. They laughed about it, too much, because laughter is what you do when you know the truth might not land well. Friends had been supportive last time, encouraging, proud even. But this time felt different. This time came too soon. They worried people would think they hadn't learned anything, that the sale meant nothing, that the growth was temporary. So they hid the trailer, not because they were ashamed of it, but because they were unsure how to explain it. Every knock at the door came with a quick glance out the window. Every visit turned into choreography. "Don't open that gate. Park on the street. Let's sit inside tonight." The trailer became quieter, not unfinished, just unseen, and slowly that started to matter. One afternoon, a friend noticed, not dramatically, not suspiciously, just a casual glance and a pause. "Is that a trailer?" They froze. In that half-second, every excuse lined up and fell apart. They could lie. They could deflect. They could laugh it off. Instead, they told the truth. Not the full plan, not the future, just the present. "We bought another one." There was silence, then a smile, then a laugh. "You know you're allowed to want things, right?" That sentence landed harder than expected, because the hiding wasn't about judgment, it was about permission. That night the cover came off. Lights went on, tools came out, the trailer exhaled like it had been holding its breath too. They realized something important. If you keep hiding what you're building, you start hiding from it too. This is Hitch to home. Sometimes secrecy feels safer than honesty, but the moment you stop hiding is usually the moment the build can really begin. And this one? It was done pretending.